thing every guest has to complete this sentence. Life is ...
Life is evolving for me. I think that's the point. As Lucy sort of touched on, it seems to get better for me the older I get. So, the message would probably be if you're struggling a little bit at the moment, the message for me is it gets better. Like it gets, the more mature you get, the more challenges you face. It's evolving. So certainly I don't look back in time and think, oh, I wish I was 21 again. I'm pretty happy with where things are. I'm certainly in a better spot now than when I was 21. So for me, life's evolving, mate, if that answers your question.
No one tells you what you're supposed to do. Where we're going or what you're doing's up to me and you.
Kane Cornes played exactly 300 games of AFL football. The precise nature of that figure also says something about the person and the methodical attention to detail. Premiership player, All-Australian, multiple best and fairest winner, all at his beloved Port Adelaide. Football is an intrinsic part of the Cornes DNA. Graeme, his dad, is an SA icon, and Chad, his brother, had a stellar AFL career. But it's the media work now that is creating waves. Honest, confronting, polarising. He says what he thinks, often ruffling feathers on the journey. Always prepared, professional and purposeful. Welcome to the show, Kane. Great to have you, mate.
Scotty, a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Nice introduction.
All good. I want to start with your family. I've been a very respectful and admirer of your dad from afar for many years, and his impact, on you. I don't think it's coincidence that one, you followed his path as a footballer, but also now from a media point of view, just as a role model, what has he meant to you?
Yeah, it was a reasonably complicated childhood, to be fair. My parents broke up when I was 3 years of age. I don't have any memories of mum and dad together, but they certainly moved pretty close to each other. So Chad and I moved in with mum. We lived about 500 metres from the Glenelg Footy Club, which I grew up next to and grew to love. Of course, Dad was a bit of an icon there. He played over 300 games there and was a dual premiership coach back in the 80s at Glenelg. So to be that close to the footy club that I love was significant. But in terms of the role model that Dad was, he just involved us, which was great. And looking back, it was amazing to be able to be involved in the footy club. He often invited Chad and I into his halftime addresses, and just little things at the dinner table. He'd help us pick the side for the game, and when he was the first coach of the Crows, it was a big deal here in South Australia. And for us to go along to the games, be involved in the change rooms, training sessions, it just sort of encapsulated my love and grew my love for the sport. So the way that he was able to get us in and around something that he was passionate about certainly grew my passion, and that's where it started, I reckon.
Did it make your pathway easier, or was there a pressure that sort of came with that at certain times as well?
I think it made it easier, but it wasn't without its challenges. I mean, you did often get there, but you're only in this position because of your father, and it was often tough as a kid in year 5 or 6, and you turn up at school on a Monday, and the Crows might have got thrashed by a big Victorian club, and there was some brutal beatings early days for the Adelaide Football Club. So to deal with a bit of bullying and a bit of teasing was par for the course, I guess. So it wasn't without its challenges, but all in all, I think it made my pathway easier because, as I explained, it just grew my love for the game, and it was an insight that not many 10, 11, 12-year-olds got to get, and I certainly treasured those moments.
And what role did Chad play in all of that? Typically we hear of brothers who've come through basically often punching the crap out of each other in the backyard and building that mental and physical resilience. Is that what it was like?
Exactly like that. He was brutal on me. He was 3 years older than me, and as I said, we grew up with mum just in a tiny little place. We had no backyard whatsoever, but what we did have was a park just about a couple of 100 metres down the road. So every day there was 6 of us basically in the neighbourhood that played 3-on-3 footy, every day after school. And I was always on the opposite team to Chad, and he was the typical big brother, maybe with a bit of extra venom. Like, he had a pretty serious temper and often took it out on me. But I mean, he was a pretty good big brother, but at times it got a bit willing.
Often the role of the big brother. Look, a lot of accolades through the career. Premiership player, 4-time best and fairest. I think 2 All-Australians, all of that, which is, I guess the jewels in a terrific career. But I want to talk more about, I reckon there's a thread through everything that you do that is around a very singular mindset. You're a marathon runner. The role that you played and in some ways redefined as a defensive midfielder required real singular focus. Out of your 300 games, you played 174 consecutive games in a row, and that takes an attitude. What is that? Where does it come from? Is it? Do you acknowledge that as being potentially your biggest strength?
Biggest strength, but also probably biggest weakness. I think I was probably born out of a bit of a fear. I went into every game thinking, I was going to play poorly. And I didn't have that confidence that some of the great players have. And I'd often lie awake and think, I'm playing on Sam Mitchell. How many possessions is he going to get on me this time? It was really fear-based and fear-driven. And the singular mindset was a strength, but it was also a weakness. And in hindsight, I don't reckon I was a great teammate, just because I did get caught up in my own world a little bit too much. So if I could go back and relive it, I'd have a bit more of a 360 lens on the impact that I was having on my teammates as well. So that was probably a regret of mine, and that single drive focus to stop my man and to play well myself probably at times was detrimental to the team. And looking back, it was what made me good and what made me have a successful career. But in the end, it was also a bit of a weakness for me. So I think towards the end of my career, particularly when Ken Hinkley came in, I was definitely a better team player, and I often would start on the bench and have no issues with that and play different roles, be it in game or prior to the game or during the season. And I was definitely a better teammate the longer my career went on.
That I guess that singular focus, and I think it's a really interesting insight into a lot of elite athletes, but the anxiety that sort of came with that. I think we were talking a few weeks back about just that mental anxiety before games, and almost, I guess, putting you in a position where you might not have been enjoying what you were doing, but you were doing it. Was that tough, early stages of your career?
Yeah, I can't ever say I enjoyed. I used to wake up almost dreading game day because of that anxiety. You wake up and you think, oh, God, I've got to go and play footy tonight. And that may be unbelievable for people to hear, that think, oh, well, you've made it to the top level and you get to play in front of 30, 40, 50,000 people and you're living your dream. But I never sort of enjoyed that because of that anxiety factor. It was more, as I said, fear-driven. What's the media going to say? What happens if I play poorly? Am I going to get dropped next week? You're just irrational thoughts that you get. But I loved the training side of it. Loved pre-season. Loved being around the teammates. Loved day-to-day of being an AFL footballer. But ironically, hated game day. And it got worse the longer my career went on and the pressure that built with that. And I've heard other players speak about it, but did I enjoy it? No. But after a win in the change rooms and you've played well and you've contributed and you've had a good game, the best part of it is sort of that hour after a win in the change rooms with your mates that you sort of miss when you do retire.
It's that grind of any elite sport, but particularly the treadmill of AFL footy, where often it's that anxiety that builds up pretty much all week, and there is that hour or 2 hours of just twilight period after a win where you get just to take a breath, but the following morning the treadmill starts again. So it's a very unique environment.
Well, it is. You just don't get enough time to enjoy it. So even after a good win, a home and away win, already the coaches, and you speak from experience on this, you've already got a lens to what's next. Boys, we've got to recover. Look after yourself tonight. We've got such and such the following week. They're in good form, or they're coming off a bad win. You've got to be prepared for their best. And it's like, well, hang on. We're moments after just having a big win, which we've planned all week for. Let's just enjoy it a little bit. And I think that the best coaches have that, where guys enjoy it for the night. When we turn up on Monday, we'll review it. We'll have a look at it. And then come Tuesday, Wednesday, then we'll move on to next week's opponents. But really, the only team that get to enjoy AFL footy is on that last Saturday in September, and you've won the Premiership. And how realistic is that for anyone? I mean, one team gets it every year, and some great players don't ever get to experience it. So it's an interesting roller coaster ride for a lot of players and a lot of professional sports people.
Do you think that's one of the challenges now? I mean, mental health in all areas of society it's a disease. It's a challenge that's just raising its head in so many different areas now. From a sporting perspective, that relentless pressure, etc., is that a contributing factor to the pressure that players are under? And do coaches have more of a responsibility to, in some ways, try and lighten that pressure during the week, or is it just that's what it is? You enter the game, that's part and parcel of it.
It's a bit of both, I think. Like, there's certainly a responsibility for the players to look after it and invest in their own mental health. There's a responsibility from the club. There's certainly a responsibility from the AFL and the Players Association, who I think do a pretty good job, and it's well resourced. But there's also a part of, well, this is what you're signing up for. So you've got to take the good with the bad. And I know that each job has their own pros and cons, and I'm assuming that if you're a doctor and you're in a high pressure environment, or you're a surgeon, or you're a paramedic, or whatever it is, a police officer, each job has its own downfalls, and everyone has to deal with their own mental health and take some responsibility for it. But I think the good thing is there's an openness to it now, and we're seeing a lot more people reach out and ask for help if they need it, and certainly there's more resources, and it's more it's not frowned upon anymore, which I think can only be a good thing.
I think one of the great examples that we have at the moment, is the Richmond Football Club. And I don't think there is a group that play with more enjoyment, flair. It's fun in their game. It's almost childlike at times. It doesn't mean it's not serious. And there's a very heavy performance component to that. But I think they've struck this amazing balance of elite level, high performance environment and fun. They seem to be enjoying the game more than ever.
What they have done, I think you're right, spot on, is they've embraced the individuals amongst their group. And when you are, when you're not trying to fit into what everyone else thinks you should be, and what does an AFL footballer look like, and then pigeonholed into that, I think Damien Hardwick and the Richmond Footy Club have really tapped into what makes these individuals tick. And the best example for that is someone like a Jack Higgins addressing their playing group after half time. I mean, that role has been sacrosanct for the captain for so many years. He's the only one that can address the playing group after half time. How about a 10-gamer cracking jokes to the team and expressing his personality in a big game after half time, and the team's just re-entered the field? Like, I was sort of shocked by that, and I've never seen anyone else do it. I've never seen the whole 44 playing group run out with their Guernseys on and celebrate a premiership. That's never ever happened before, but Richmond have done it. So it's not a 22 that just played, it's a whole club attitude. They've embraced the individuals, and they've been certainly at the forefront of culture and teamwork and mateship, more so than any other club that I've seen.
Yeah, it's certainly been a breath of fresh air. Your role specifically as a player, you had targets on most weeks, like personal battles against some of the best players in the competition. Doing that week in, week out, how much of that was a mental battle? How much of it was a mental confrontation with the player, whether it was Gary Ablett, Brent Harvey, some of the best midfielders in the game? And what did you learn about those mental battles? Did you know at different times you had a player mentally?
Yeah, you did. So Monday morning, I'd walk into midfield coach Phil Walsh's office, and I'd basically just say to him, the first words were, "Who have I got this week?" And he would tell me on a Monday. Now, things have changed so much that the role of a negative midfielder is not as prevalent as it once was. But for me, I loved it, to have that target, to know on a Monday to plan all week, to look at their vision. And my goal was to always keep them under 20 possessions. I wasn't so concerned about what I did. What I did was a bonus. But that one-on-one battle, I miss in footy. Like, I think really it's only the ruckman v ruckman. And players don't really get to experience it. So as a modern day midfielder, you walk off the field and you think, well, I've had 30, but what's your opposition had? Whereas I knew when I walked off the ground each and every day, pretty much each and every game that I'd either won or I'd lost. And that was it. There was no confusion for me, which I liked. It did take its toll mentally because you just had to be on for the full game. There was no lapses because I was so determined not to let my opposition player touch the footy. And as I said, often that single-mindedness was a negative attribute to my team, to the point where, you know, maybe I'd put myself in a position to stop my player, but that wasn't the best thing for the team. So, you know, it didn't come without its faults, and, you know, certainly got beaten on occasions. But all in all, I loved playing that role. It suited me. It suited my personality. It suited my physical attributes, and you know, was a reason that I was able to play for 15 years. I think, when, you know, some other players with a lot more talent than what I had probably left the system sooner.
Was there a player that, you know, over the course of the journey that you actually felt like you had their number? And on the flip side of that, was there a player that you just were never able to really get on top of?
Yeah, there was a couple where as soon as you go to them prior to the game, you could just see their shoulders slump and look down, and you sort of know that you had them. It'd be unfair to mention names, I think, because, you know, some of these are great players, but you felt like going in. But then there's others, like I just couldn't stop Brent Harvey. Like, I just, whatever I did, he had my measure. So he knew that when I went to him, he could take me forward, or he could do some other things, and he could use his speed, which I didn't have, and get a hold of me. And then there was just some genuine 50-50 battles. You know, I had some great ones with Simon Black, who just never, ever gave up and was just so competitive that even though I went to him, he just wouldn't stop. And he really took that on as a challenge, and we probably split the duels. You know, same with someone like a Sam Mitchell, who was just so skillful, and if you let them get into the game, they get their confidence up. So it was brilliant. And, you know, some of those roles that I had, I'll sort of treasure forever and look back on fondly.
So the playing career has transitioned into a media career, and it's an interesting media career, and I'm fascinated by it. And I actually love the job that you're doing, because I think it comes, leadership and honesty comes with a pressure, and I actually enjoy the liberated way that you are speaking your truth. You've ruffled some feathers. There's no doubt about that. So my first question is, what motivates you? Is it controversy that motivates you, or is it the truth? You know, when you're looking for a story or an angle or a commentary piece, are you looking for the controversy, or are you looking to find the truth?
I think it's authenticity is probably the word. And firstly, you know, I think there's a spot for someone like myself in the AFL media. I don't know if anyone's done it before, but, you know, when you travel a little bit overseas and you see the way that the American broadcasters cover the sport over there, there's an honesty, and there's a no prisoners approach where they just call it as they see it. And I think the best broadcasters in American sport are the ones that are most honest, and with that comes some controversy and some backlash and some fights and some bust-ups and some social media stuff. And I just think there's a niche for someone to do the same here in AFL footy. So I wouldn't say it's not without some planning and some calculation behind it, but I'll never ever say anything I don't believe in. And I think that's, you know, something that I learned from watching Dad do it for so long in the media after his coaching. He pretty much just called it as he saw it. And if you make a point, if you back it up with facts, and if you're happy to go against the grain, with that comes some controversy. So I don't seek it, but I'd be lying to say it's not a calculated approach to fill a niche that I don't think was here in Australian football coverage. There's a lot of boring people that cover the game that just toe the party line, and it bores me. Like, I just watch, I think, oh, it's just, you know, turn the commentary down, because, you know, how great's this, how great's that, the umpiring's good, the teams are great, da-da-da-da-da. Well, switch off. So, you know, that's the broadcasting I like, and that's what I've sort of tailored mine to.
Does it come at cost at times? I mean, you're saying things at times, you know, let's say, you know, the Alex Jezelenko, the commentary around the mark, which I actually agree, when you look at it in the cold light of day, was spot on. But it still comes with an emotion and a pressure. There have been times, whether it's an Eddie Maguire or a Taylor Walker or a Alex Jezelenko commentary about the mark, where you've really felt the cost of those comments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cost comes relationship-wise when you are speaking about people that you know and that you've played with, or ex-teammates or ex-coaches, be it a Ken Hinkley or a Travis Boak or someone like that. That's not been the hardest part, commenting on people that you know and the backlash that's caused. So some of those people aren't that happy with the commentary of mine, which has been tough. And then, the social media stuff's okay, but after the 100th time you've been called a flog or a dickhead or whatever, it's almost like a death by 1,000 cuts. It sort of builds up on you a bit where you can brush it off for a while, but eventually if you see it enough, it takes its toll, or even if you don't see it, someone else will tell you about it. And so that's been hard, but definitely learning to switch off more and more. And, from the minute I turn my microphone off, I try and forget about what's just been said. Easier said than done from the time that I turn the microphone on again. But often the controversy as well comes with further conversation. And, we're in a sort of a content game, particularly the last 10 weeks, where, Scotty, we haven't had much to talk about. So the off-field stuff's been all we've really spoken about. So I try and look at every little bit as an opportunity to generate conversation, be it on radio or TV or in the newspaper.
Don't change what you're doing. I know you won't, but don't change what you're doing. It is a breath of fresh air. Yeah. The competition's about to get underway again. Is this competition right now, is this as good as the game can be? Is the game, I'm talking about the national game, the number one game in Australia. If you go right back to when the AFL, when it went from state league-based competitions to the AFL, sort of, I guess, when you're talking mid-'80s, has the game really reached its full potential, or is this as good as it's going to get? And I'm parking the coronavirus just to the side, but is this as good as the national game is ever going to be, or do you think there's opportunities for this game to be better than it's ever been?
No, there's always opportunities to make it better. That's where you need smart people making the decisions and changing rules and tweaking. And look, I get a bit frustrated with all the rule changes, but I think some of them have been good for the game. I switched on the TV the other day and there was a game from sort of late 90s and the two ruckmen were standing about 20 metres opposing each other at the centre bounce and just sprinting and running up and trying to knee each other in the throat. And we saw how many knee injuries that created. So what they did there, they shortened the run-ups, and it's safer to be a ruckman than what it was. And the changes around concussion and head safety. I remember seeing Mark Rasciuto knock out Dean Kemp with a bump that would cost him 6 weeks today. It was nothing. It wasn't even a free kick. And this is only sort of 20 years ago. So the game's safer, which can only be a good thing for attracting people to the game. I think the players have never been fitter, faster, stronger, better tacklers. I love the game as it is. Does it mean that it's going to be, can't be better? Absolutely not. And we need to look at that. I'd love to see a team from Tassie come in and continue to grow the game. There's other things that we can do, and the coronavirus has sort of pushed that back a little bit. But I really enjoy the game as it is, but it's not to say that it can't be better.
Fast forward 20 years, what would you like the game and what would you like the game to look like? And I'm not just talking about what it looks like being played, but just from a national footprint. What would be your hopes and dreams if you're sitting on your couch, you're done with a 20-year media career, you've won some amazing awards, et cetera, and you're looking back now as a bystander at the national competition, and what are your hopes and dreams for that? Yeah,
but better stadiums around Australia to the point where, we don't just hold the grand final at the MCG. I'd love to see, similar to what they've done in the NFL, where you have a rotating situation where the grand final might go to Perth one year. There's a massive stadium there. We know that's been built. There's been $1 billion spent there. If there's upgrades to Adelaide Oval, we can have it here. There might be a grand final in Victoria, which we'll see. I know the MCG is committed to that until about 2050 or something ridiculous. But for it to be truly national would be terrific. How do we get the viewers at home a better insight? And just seeing some of the things that have been done with coronavirus and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning playing golf against Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods, and them being mic'd up and giving a great insight into what makes a great golf shot and how do the best golfers that we've ever seen think about playing their shot. Well, what does a full forward think when he's at full forward and he's up against his opponent? How does he beat him? I don't know. I'm just thinking, how do we bring the audience along give them a better insight. The documentaries that we've seen with the test on Amazon, the documents of the Australian cricket team have been outstanding. The Michael Jordan one, I know you loved. I loved that. Amazon are doing some things with AFL teams, following them around. I'm really interested to see how they eventuate. So just an insight and a fly on the wall account, I think, for viewers at home would be terrific, and the experience in the stadium as well, because we've seen the last 10 weeks how important fans are to the game, and how ordinary the spectacle is when you're playing in front of an empty stadium.
I think that's a great point. There's so much, I guess, myth and often misconception about what it actually means to be an AFL player or an elite athlete. Even just to hear some of your anecdotes today about the anxiety before games, the fear that you felt at times in order to perform. On the outside, you look at Kane Cornes and say 300-game player, All-Australian, 4-time best and fairest, supremely confident, etc., etc. But players are no different. You know, they battle the demons and the challenges in order to perform, and to take our audience through that sort of experience, I think would really tie them into what it actually means to play elite level sport, and gives them an armchair ride of what it means.
I think, for me, footy was just a pretty good metaphor for life. Like, you have the occasional real big win and big high, and you win one premiership, for me, speaking from experience from 300 games and all the pre-seasons that you do, and that's the high. But there's some pretty bad lows in there as well, from winning 3 games in a year in 2011 to the coach telling you, you're going to be moved on or you're going to be traded, to dealing with the loss of a teammate in 2012 and John McCarthy, to dealing with the loss of a coach who was so close to you, and Phil Walsh. So it's just ups and downs like throughout a footy career, and I've always said it's a pretty good metaphor for life, where some amazing highs, but some challenges and some pretty low lows that most people would face.
So you're well and truly into family life now. The beautiful Lucy, three kids, Eddie, Raphael, I hope I got the pronunciation right, and Sonny.
You did.
What does family mean to you? How would they describe you as a dad as well?
She's just here, Lucy. There she is.
Stop it!
Maybe I should ask Lucy.
How would you describe me?
What's he like as a dad, Lucy?
Well, you're the love of my life, so I'm not the best person to ask, because I could be a little bit biased. But I think you're getting better with age in terms of your attitude towards life. Although driving here today, you were a little intense on the road. But, I think you're more relaxed than you've ever been, which is a good thing, although you're still pretty intense.
There we go. We met when I was 15 at school, so it's been, how long's that? Sort of 26-ish years that we've been together, and married young and had kids young. But no, we're a pretty close sort of unit. I don't have a lot of friends outside of, we spend so much time together just as a family, and the time together is pretty precious, because I'm in Victoria every weekend for work during the footy season. So we're a tight group. The boys are great, and Lucy's a champ. She's amazing. So very blessed and very lucky.
I'll have to get Lucy on the show to get all the all the background information next time. Mate, you've been very generous with your time. Great to have you on the Inside Session. Last thing, every guest has to complete this sentence. Life is ...
Life is evolving for me. I think that's the point. As Lucy sort of touched on, it seems to get better for me the older I get. So, the message would probably be, if you're struggling a little bit at the moment, the message for me is it gets better. Like, it gets, the more mature you get, the more challenges that you face, it's evolving. So certainly I don't look back in time and think, I wish I was 21 again. I'm pretty happy with where things are. I'm certainly in a better spot now than when I was 21. So for me, life's evolving, mate, if that answers your question.
Good place to be. Been fascinating to have you on the show. To me, it was always much more than the obvious sporting footy accolades along the way. It's the mindset that's been a common thread throughout many things that you've done. And also, interestingly, just to hear about your own evolution. And as we get older, we get wiser. We look back on certain things as well and go, maybe I could have done a couple of things slightly differently. Yeah. That's getting wiser, mate. That's the getting of wisdom. Mate, awesome to have you on the show. look forward to catching up with you. I'll see you next week when we do a bit of work together. But been a pleasure to have you on the Inside Session.
Anytime, Scotty. Love your work, mate, and look forward to catching up again next week.
Cheers, mate. Please remember, if you're ever in need of support, reach out to Lifeline or Beyond Blue. For more Inside Sessions, you can find us on all of the social platforms or at lifechanger.org.au. Thanks for joining us, and here's to a life well lived.
I don't think I'll ever. I don't think I'll ever. I don't think I'll ever. I don't think I will ever know.